Hi, I'm Kaylin. Last Thanksgiving, my sister texted me 5 words that cracked something in me. Thanksgiving isn't for failures, Kaylin. I was halfway to their house. With food, gifts, and gas money I didn't owe anyone. They didn't forget me. They excluded me. On purpose. And the worst part? My mother didn't say a word. They thought I'd stay silent. They thought I'd keep paying bills from the sidelines, unseen, uninvited, unfailing. But what happens when the so-called failure stops funding the entire family? Before we dive in, what time are you listening and where from? Drop it in the comments. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal, it's what happens when silence ends and receipts start speaking. There's something oddly comforting about repetition. Same grocery store, same pie recipe, same early November chill pressing against the window as I pack the trunk of my car. I had just clipped the last satin ribbon onto the Thanksgiving gift basket, organic teas for Dad, soy-free fudge for Jovi, and an oversized candle with cinnamon and cedar that Seraphine always said she loved but never bought for herself. I'd wrapped everything in warm tones, burnt orange, cranberry red, a muted gold bow. The kind of color scheme you only commit to when you're hoping the gesture says more than the silence ever has. I hadn't technically been invited yet, but I assumed, just like every year, that I would show up, smile, hand out dishes, and carry the stress of keeping things from unraveling. I set the basket on the passenger seat and got back inside the house for the last dish. That's when my phone buzzed. Not a message to me directly, just the usual family group chat. I opened it absently, expecting to see Seraphine making snarky comments about sweet potato portions or Mom asking for someone to bring more folding chairs. But my name wasn't there. No tag, no question, no emoji with a waving hand, just a stream of messages from Seraphine, my parents, and a few cousins about keeping it simple this year. Assignments had already been made. Turkey, stuffing, cornbread, none of them mine. I blinked. Then another buzz. A separate message. From Seraphine. Hey, we're keeping it small this year. Mom agrees. Thanksgiving isn't really a place for failures, Kaylin. Let's not make it awkward. The room went quiet. Or maybe my ears did. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. My hands stayed curled around my phone like they were afraid to drop it and make it real. Failures? I stared at that word as if it had claws. I scrolled back up to double check. Was this some kind of mistake? A wrong message? But no, there was my name. There was that tone, that cold, clinical tone Seraphine had perfected over the years, like slicing skin with a smile. I opened our family group chat again, just to be sure, just in case someone had asked, "Hey, where's Kaylin?" But all I saw was my mother posting, "Can't wait," under a photo Seraphine had just shared of the table already being set. The same dining table I helped refinish 2 years ago. The same table runner I hand-sewed last November, trying to revive a dying tradition. It was still there, my work. But my name? Nowhere. And Mom? Not even a question. Not even a blink. So it wasn't just Seraphine. It was all of them. I tapped out a private message to my mother. "Hey, is this real?" No reply. Not then. Not an hour later, not even a gray bubble to show she was typing. Just silence. I stood in my driveway, the engine still running, the trunk full of gifts, pies, and promises that didn't mean anything now. I had planned to drive halfway to Columbus that night, stay at a motel, and help set up the next morning. Instead, I sat down in the driver's seat and stared out through the windshield. My eyes didn't tear up. My hands didn't shake. I just went still. A few minutes later, I turned off the ignition and started driving. Not toward the highway, just anywhere. I ended up at the overlook above Deerfield Ravine, a place I hadn't visited since high school. The town lights glowed faintly in the distance, and the wind carried faint scents of wood smoke and wet leaves. I stayed there until it was too dark to see the trees. My phone buzzed once, an Instagram notification. Someone had tagged me in a throwback photo from college. I didn't look. I didn't call anyone, didn't text back, didn't even delete the message. I just existed, like fog. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, the ceiling spinning slowly above me, Every hour or so, I'd reach for my phone and reread the same words. Thanksgiving isn't really a place for failures. And I kept asking myself, what made me a failure? Leaving a toxic brokerage firm after a decade of silence? Starting my own practice, even if it meant working from my kitchen table with nothing but a recycled laptop and sheer will? Paying Seraphine's rent when she lost her job? Covering Jovi's piano lessons last spring and the dental bill her husband couldn't afford? I paid. I always paid. And now, I was too much? Or not enough? The bitterness didn't come like fire. It came like something colder, like a winter current sneaking under the skin, slow and numbing. And maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it was them. Maybe it had always been them. They liked me silent, helpful, invisible. But a visible failure? That was too much. I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I just stared at my ceiling and thought about money, about records, about receipts. And the next morning, as the sun broke through a thin curtain of clouds, I brewed a pot of strong black coffee, sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and called the bank. The next morning, I didn't waste time. Still in my robe, coffee barely touched, I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and logged into my banking dashboard. The screen lit up with routine, a ritual I used to perform with pride. Now I looked at it like a list of mistakes. There they were, auto transfers scheduled for the 15th of every month, $450 to Tobin's account, bridge fund, we once called it. Then it became a lifeline. Then it became expected. $220 for Jovi's piano lessons, a gift originally, an obligation eventually, $150 monthly grocery card sent to Seraphine through an app so she could spoil the kids a little. I stared at the numbers, then clicked cancel next to each one. Confirmed. Done. It didn't feel vindictive. It didn't even feel bold. It felt still, like pulling the plug on a machine that had been humming in the background for years. You forget the sound until it's gone. Later that afternoon, I walked into my tiny home office and pulled open the filing drawer. Stacks of receipts, email printouts, proof of every bailout I'd handed my family since 2019. Mortgage cosign, car registration renewal for Seraphine's second SUV, checks for emergency dental work, babysitting bonuses I never got paid back for. I pulled one paper out at random, a printed Venmo note from when Tobin had lost his job at the gym and just needed a little help till next month. I'd sent $3,000. The note read, "Appreciate you. You're the real MVP." Funny how quickly real MVP turned into awkward presence at the holiday table. The thing that stayed with me most wasn't the money. It was the way I disappeared when the money stopped. Useful, I had value. Independent, I was disposable. I remembered when Seraphine cried to me about how embarrassed she felt being the broke mom at Jovi's recital. I had spent an entire Saturday driving to 4 different stores to find matching outfits for her and Jovi. Seraphine cried again, this time from joy, and posted a photo with the caption, "We clean up well. Couldn't have done it without sisterhood." Back then, I had smiled at that post. Now I couldn't help but laugh, dry, hollow. The very next year, she wouldn't even say my name in the same breath as Thanksgiving. 2 days later, a text lit up my screen. Seraphine. "Hey, did the payment bounce? Tobin says the daycare thing didn't go through." I didn't delay. Me. "That support's over. Wishing you both the best." I waited. 1 minute? 5? An hour? Nothing. No screaming, no manipulation. Just silence. I suppose when people see you as a resource, they don't know how to respond when the tap runs dry. It's not a relationship. It's a supply chain. That evening, I sat on my small balcony with a throw blanket around my shoulders and my second cup of tea gone cold. I opened Instagram, habit, more than curiosity, and there it was. Seraphine's post, photos from the family Thanksgiving, everyone in matching flannel, themed pies on labeled trays. The caption read, "We do what we can with what we have. Grateful for family." I zoomed in. The copper pie tray? I bought it for her bridal shower. The plaid pillows on the couch? From a Black Friday bundle I had gifted the year before. Even the folding chairs tucked around the dining table, ordered last November, shipped to her house because Mom's back can't handle the old wooden ones anymore. All mine, all carefully curated, then wiped of my name. I set my phone down, not gently. They hadn't erased me this week. They'd been erasing me for years. This was just the first time I saw it clearly. People don't always steal from you in dollars. Sometimes they steal your presence, your effort, your care, and wrap it in captions like family. It would have hurt less if they'd burned everything I gave them. At least then, I wouldn't see my memories used as props in a scene I was cut out of. That night I didn't cry, I didn't journal, I didn't call anyone to rant or to ask, am I overreacting? I just let it settle. The ache, the finality, the clarity. This wasn't revenge. It was recognition. They would learn to live without me, and I would learn to be more than someone's backup plan. 3 nights later, I logged into Facebook. There it was, a new post from Mom, family photo, Seraphine, Tobin, the kids, my parents, matching smiles, matching lies. I wasn't in it, and nobody asked why. The ping came mid-morning while I was halfway through my second cup of coffee and adjusting a spreadsheet for a client. I wasn't expecting it. I hadn't heard a sound from the family group chat since before Thanksgiving, but there it was, bold and bright at the top of my screen. The McCarthys, always us. I paused. My finger hovered over the notification, and for a moment I considered ignoring it. But habit is a hard thing to kill. I tapped. A photo filled the screen. Everyone was there. Mom, Dad, Seraphine and Tobin, little Jovi, even Great Aunt Carol, who lived 2 hours away and usually said no to gatherings unless someone died. They were all crowded around the dining table, arms linked, faces turned to the camera with wide smiles and flushed cheeks. It was the kind of image people frame and keep on the mantle. It was also the kind of image I had been cropped from, not by scissors, but by silence. I stared at the photo longer than I should have. At first, I looked for myself, out of instinct. Maybe I was tucked in the corner, blurry in the background, a shadow, a mistake. But I wasn't there. I hadn't been invited, and now I'd been scrubbed out of the memory too. Underneath the photo were comments from the family chat. Best Thanksgiving yet! So much less drama this time. Can we make this the new tradition? Honestly, the vibe this year just felt lighter. I scrolled. No one mentioned me. No one said, "Kaylin, you should have been there." Not even sarcastically. Not even cruelly. I was just nothing. I started to type something, half a joke, maybe a jab to lighten the sting. Something like, glad I could lighten the room by being absent. But I stopped. My thumb hovered over the delete button, and I pressed it. Then I turned off my screen. It had been 3 days since Thanksgiving. 3 days since I'd removed every financial crutch they'd leaned on me for. 3 days since they posted that picture without me. And still, no one asked where I was. I walked into the kitchen, filled my glass with water, and sat down at the dining table. The same table I had inherited from Grandma Liz when she passed. The same table that had hosted 10 straight years of Thanksgiving dinners back when I was the one hosting, back when I was still considered family. Later that night, while lying on the couch, I remembered something that made my chest tighten. Before Thanksgiving, I had texted Jovi privately. Just a simple message. Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. Be brave with your song today. I miss you. I'd received no reply. At the time, I'd told myself she was busy, that maybe she hadn't seen it. But that night, I saw her new post on social media. My favorite moment this Thanksgiving was singing for everyone. It made me feel brave, love my family so much. My throat tightened. I had picked that song. I had paid for those piano lessons when Seraphine said they were a luxury we just can't manage right now. I had encouraged Jovi through every moment she wanted to quit. And now, my message had never reached her. I stared at the timestamp. It lined up perfectly with the family dinner. That could only mean one thing. Seraphine had deleted it. She had seen it, read it, and then, like I was spam, she had erased it. I set my phone face down and looked toward the darkened window. My reflection stared back at me, tired, small, smaller than I'd ever felt before. "If they can go on like I was never there," I whispered aloud, "was I ever really there at all?" The words felt foreign coming out of my mouth, but they landed like truth. It wasn't just that I'd been left out. It was that the absence had been intentional, seamless. They weren't mourning the space I left. They were reshaping the story to pretend I was never part of it. That's what hurt the most. Not the exclusion, but the rewriting. They were building a version of the family where I was never needed, never missed, never worth remembering, and I couldn't stop them. I stood slowly, limbs heavy, and made my way to the back of the hallway closet. On the top shelf was a dusty shoebox labeled, in fading ink, "Thanksgiving Things." I brought it down and opened it on my lap. Inside were snapshots of happier years. A construction paper turkey with Jovi's tiny kindergarten hand traced around the feathers. She'd written Aunt Kay across the top in glittery blue pen. Receipts for pies I had custom ordered and hand-delivered when Seraphine insisted she couldn't pull it off like the Pinterest moms. Sticky notes from past dinners. Mom had once taped a thank you note to my casserole dish. "You saved the meal." Again. I had saved so many meals. Now, I wasn't even offered a seat. I folded the notes and drawings back into the box and closed the lid, holding it for a moment longer on my lap. These were the relics of a life I used to have. They'd meant something once. Now they just sat there, paper memories in a cardboard tomb. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about truth. They were deleting me. And the more they deleted, the clearer I remembered. What I'd done, what I'd given, who I used to be. And I wasn't sure which version of that was harder to live with, the one where I was erased, or the one where I still cared. The more they deleted me, the more the memories surged forward, clearer, sharper, as if my mind was stitching together everything they'd tried to cut out. That morning, I was folding laundry when a forwarded email popped into my inbox. Subject line, "Thank you to our music patrons." It was from the community newsletter of the middle school I'd once attended, the same one I'd anonymously donated to every fall since 2018 to support their music program. I opened it without much thought, more out of routine than curiosity. But my breath caught halfway through scrolling. There it was at the bottom under a glossy photo of 6th graders holding violins. A heartfelt thank you to Seraphine McCarthy, whose generous contributions helped fund this semester's scholarship recipients. Your support is music to our ears. I blinked. Seraphine McCarthy? No. That donation had come from me, like it always had. I'd sent the check 6 weeks ago, just like every year, under my full name, Kaylin A. McCarthy, and this time I even emailed to confirm they'd received it, yet there it was, in black and white. My contribution, her credit. I stared at the screen as the slow crawl of betrayal settled in my chest. First, I checked the email confirmation again. Same amount, same timestamp. Then I picked up the phone. The administrative assistant at the school sounded pleasant enough, cheerful even. But when I asked about the donation records, her tone shifted, hesitant, slightly confused. "Well," she said, "we received the initial pledge under Kaylin, but then Seraphine followed up and submitted a revised note, asking to have her name listed instead, since the funds were transferred internally for tax purposes." It seemed coordinated? I sat very still. "Did she say why?" I asked. "Just that you two had arranged it." We hadn't. I thanked her, hung up, and set the phone down slowly, like it might shatter if I moved too quickly. The next blow landed an hour later. Scrolling through the local arts page on Facebook, again out of habit, I saw a post from the recital hall where Jovi's piano performance had taken place. "We're so grateful to Seraphine McCarthy for supporting young talent. This recital was held in honor of her commitment to Jovi's musical growth." There was a picture beneath it. Jovi at the grand piano, hands poised, expression focused. Seraphine was tagged. Me? Nowhere. I had funded every lesson, paid for the keyboard, researched the teacher, encouraged Jovi every step of the way, even when her mom forgot the rehearsal dates or skipped school night practice sessions. But apparently I didn't count anymore. Or worse, I never had. That night, I stood in my kitchen, my dinner still untouched on the stove, and called Mom. I wasn't planning to vent or scream. I just needed grounding, a moment of honesty from someone who should know the difference between truth and performance. She picked up after the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, voice warm but distant, like she already had her guard up. "Did you see the school newsletter?" I asked, cutting straight through the pleasantries. She hesitated. "The one from McKinley Middle?" "I think so. It was sweet, wasn't it?" "It wasn't hers, Mom. That donation was from me." A pause. I continued, steady but firm. "And the piano program. Everything about that recital came from me. She's never even sat through a full lesson." Another pause. Then, she sighed. "Kaylin," she said softly, "sometimes people just need a little encouragement. Your sister, she's trying. Maybe she needed to feel seen." I clenched my jaw. "So she takes credit for what I do? For what I pay for? And that's okay?" "Do you really need credit for everything?" she asked gently. That sentence landed harder than anything else. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The lump in my throat refused to move. "Don't make this about competition," she added. "It's just family." But that was the thing, wasn't it? It was always just family. When Seraphine took what didn't belong to her, when Mom ignored it, when Dad changed the subject. But when I said no, when I stepped back, suddenly I was the problem, the burden, the failure. After we hung up, I sat alone for a long time, the phone still warm in my hand. And then the memories began to rise, uninvited. College. Seraphine had borrowed my car after hers died. She totaled it 2 blocks from the apartment. I paid the deductible, and Mom said, "She's under so much pressure already, don't be hard on her." Graduation. Seraphine never applied for jobs. Instead, she stayed home for a year, finding her passion, while I worked 2 internships and a barista shift just to stay afloat. Mom told me, "She's sensitive. Not everyone's like you." Weddings, birthdays, holidays. Over and over, she took and spun gold from what I built, and no one said a word, because peace was easier than truth, because they all believed the fiction worked better than the facts, because I wasn't meant to win, not if it meant her looking bad. I walked to the bookshelf, pulled down a folder labeled Music Program, and flipped through it. Old invoices, donor receipts, even thank you notes from the school addressed to me, ones I'd tucked away like fragile trophies. I wasn't imagining things. It wasn't in my head. I had proof. And still, I could hear Mom's voice echoing behind the facts. "Do you really need credit for everything?" No, but I needed to matter. I needed someone to see what was happening and say, "This isn't right." Instead, I realized I'd spent years hoping to be acknowledged by people who were far more comfortable pretending I didn't exist, unless they could use me. Standing in the dim hallway, I said it aloud for the first time. If I disappear, she becomes the only daughter worth remembering. It wasn't a theory anymore. It was the blueprint. Every action, every silence, every praise misplaced. Brick by brick, they were building a legacy with her name on it. And mine erased. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply slid the folder back into the shelf, closed the door to the study, and turned off every light in the house. I wouldn't bring it up again. Not to them. Next time I spoke, I'd have more than stories. I didn't sleep much after that night, not because I was angry, though I was, or heartbroken, though that too crept in at the edges, but because I finally understood something I'd been resisting for years. I wasn't part of the silence by accident. I was being written out of the story, line by line, and if I didn't start writing back, they'd finish the last chapter without me. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I wandered the aisles of the grocery store. The holiday displays were already fading, pumpkin pies discounted, turkeys shoved into a corner freezer. I used to shop for leftovers, bringing back cranberries and sweet rolls for the Sunday after. Now I walked empty-handed. No one had saved me a plate. No one was expecting me to show up. The cashiers didn't say happy holidays. They didn't say anything, and I didn't blame them. I looked like a woman fading into the shelves, silent, small, almost not there. Later that evening, as I folded the receipt from a bag of apples I wasn't hungry enough to eat, an email buzzed in. It was from Amanda, an old friend of the family. Her subject line, "Thought you should see this?" Inside was a link to a GoFundMe. Seraphine had set it up. "Help Jovi get to the regional showcase. We've had a rough financial patch. Any support is deeply appreciated." The goal was $1-800. I stared at it for a long moment. My stomach didn't twist. My chest didn't tighten. What I felt was nothing. I didn't share it. I didn't send money. I just watched. 3 days passed. The total stayed under $200. A few comments trickled in. "Wish I could help more. Sending prayers." But there was no rush. No crowd of saviors. Because for once, I wasn't filling the gap. And neither was anyone else. I closed the tab. That same afternoon, I stopped by the pharmacy to pick up a bottle of multivitamins and some tissues. I didn't expect to see anyone I knew. The air outside was gray and tired, and I figured the world would match it. But as I turned into aisle 5, I heard her voice. Jovi. She was walking past with a friend from school, bundled in a puffer coat, carrying a soda. She didn't see me standing at the other end, half tucked between shampoo bottles. She laughed. Then, quieter. "I liked having her there, but Mom says she tried to ruin everything." I froze. Her friend didn't say anything, just nodded, murmuring something about family drama. They turned the corner. Their voices faded. I stood still, so still that the automatic light above me flickered off and then on again, like the store itself had forgotten I was there. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel anger. What I felt was a collapse, soft and silent, like the floor of your chest giving way. Jovi had been my anchor, my reason to stay near, my proof that I wasn't imagining it all. And now, that was cracking too. And back home, I sat on the edge of my bed and opened a new text thread to Seraphine. I typed 3 sentences. "I'm sorry for whatever you think I ruined. I never wanted things to be this way." I stared at the blinking cursor. Then I hit backspace until it all vanished. Instead, I pulled up the message from a few weeks ago. "Thanksgiving isn't really a place for failures." The words looked colder now, more calculated. Not heat-of-the-moment cruelty, but conviction. And maybe that was what cut deepest. That someone I once braided hair with in the summer and shared a bed with during thunderstorm nights had decided I no longer had a place in the story she told. If I disappeared now, went fully silent, let it all slide, I wouldn't be the victim. I'd be the co-author of my own deletion. I stood up, walked to the closet, and pulled down the fireproof box at the back of the shelf. It thudded onto the floor, heavier than I remembered. Inside were years of things I'd kept just in case, the time she borrowed my credit card and promised she'd pay it back. I had the statement, the email from her landlord, addressed to me, confirming I'd co-signed her lease in 2019, screenshots of the piano lesson payments, Venmo logs, PayPal receipts, even the email thread with the teacher confirming Jovi's attendance schedule. I opened a new notebook, one with a marbled cover and lined pages I'd meant to use for budgeting, and began writing. Not a journal, a record, date, action, outcome. I didn't know exactly what I would do with it, not yet. But for the first time in weeks, my pen moved without hesitation. I wasn't documenting to remember anymore. I was documenting to act. I stayed up late into the night, phone on silent, music off, just me and the pages. It felt clean, purposeful. I wasn't angry at Seraphine for falling apart. I was done being the glue she never acknowledged while blaming me for every fracture. They had always told the story without me. Now I was building one they couldn't delete. The silence from Seraphine wasn't absence, it was calculation. And I knew that kind of silence. It didn't soothe, it watched. It measured your next move. It waited for you to either lash out or crawl back. I had done both before. This time, I stayed still, until the call came. It was a chilly Monday morning, the kind that made my fingers linger a little longer on the warmth of my coffee mug. I was going through invoices when my accountant Tasha called. "Kaylin," she said, her voice clipped but calm, "did you donate to 3 separate charities last quarter?" "I donated to 2. Why?" There was a pause, followed by the sound of her keyboard tapping in quick succession. "Well, your tax forms list 3, and the third, some kind of community reserve fund, is filed under your name and EIN, but the routing traces back to an account opened by a Seraphine McCarthy." My spine stiffened. My mug didn't even make it back to the table. I pressed the speaker button and grabbed a pen. "Are you sure?" I triple-checked. "This family reserve account was established 4 years ago. The deposits match some of your historic donation patterns. I thought you'd co-signed, until I noticed your name was attached without a secondary login." And just like that, the threads began to pull tight. Tasha offered to send over the flagged documents. I told her to send everything, PDFs, spreadsheets, emails if she had them. I thanked her. Then I sat very still in my kitchen, the ticking of the wall clock sounding louder than usual. I wasn't surprised, but that didn't mean it hurt any less. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just opened my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop. Truth, for me. Then I got in my car. The drive to my storage unit was only 20 minutes, but it felt longer. Every red light, every familiar billboard passed like I was floating underwater. Once inside, I walked past rows of corrugated metal doors and stopped at number 217. The lock clicked open easily. I hadn't touched this unit in over a year. Against the back wall sat the black fireproof box labeled Family. I'd kept it as a joke, back when I thought memories and paperwork could somehow protect me. Inside were years of neglected truths, co-signed documents, screenshots of unpaid Venmo requests, printed emails asking for just one more loan, copies of receipts for flights, furniture, even the down payment for the SUV Seraphine drove now, though it had somehow ended up titled under her husband's name. I loaded them into a tote bag and made a second stop, the law office of my old college friend, Nyla. We'd once studied for the bar exam together in a cramped apartment with lukewarm coffee and dreams bigger than our budgets. Nyla made partner. I didn't go into law, but our respect had lasted. "I'm not filing anything," I said, handing over the files. "Not yet." She looked through a few, then raised her brows. "But you're not bluffing either." "Not anymore." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the branches of the bare November trees, I sat in my office overlooking downtown and breathed in the clarity, until I saw her. Through the front window, standing just outside the main doors, Seraphine. She looked disheveled, not the dramatic movie kind, the real kind, like someone who didn't sleep the night before. Mascara clumped under her eyes, hair tucked messily into a bun that was never meant to be seen in public. I stepped outside. She didn't wait for a greeting. "Why are you doing this to me?" she snapped, her voice already cracking. I stayed still. "Doing what?" "You know what. The GoFundMe, the taxes, the messages. Mom said you're keeping records now like you're prepping for war." I met her eyes. "I'm not prepping for war. I'm just tired of pretending peace." She let out a bitter scoff. "You always think you're better than us." "No," I said calmly. "Just finally done being beneath you." Her mouth fell open. It didn't shut for a long time. "You think this makes you the good one? You think this means you win?" "I don't want to win. I just want to be free." There was a moment, a real one, where I saw it hit her. The realization that her grip was slipping, not because I yelled, not because I fought, but because I simply stopped playing. "I'm not pressing charges," I said, softer now. "Not yet. But if you ever use my name again, if I find even one document, one deduction, $1 in my name, you'll lose more than money." "What's that supposed to mean?" "I'll make everything public, every donation, every favor, every deal. I'll tell the truth loudly." She flinched. "You wouldn't." "I promise you," I said. "I will." She didn't say another word, just turned and walked away, stiff and shaking, the way people do when they've been hit without a fist. I didn't follow. Back inside, I returned to my desk, picked up the half-finished mug from this morning, and finally took a sip. Cold, but clean. That night, I went home. I didn't call anyone, didn't post, didn't even write it all down. I just sat on my couch and let the silence wash over me. But this time, it wasn't silence I was afraid of. It was finally mine. No apology, no need to explain, just the quiet I'd been trying to earn for years. The next morning I checked my phone. No messages from Seraphine, no rage texts, no cryptic Facebook posts. But it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like strategy. The silence from Seraphine doesn't feel peaceful this time. It feels like she's reloading. I sensed it in the way my phone stayed quiet longer than it should have, in the stillness that hovered over my inbox like a fog, too calm to be real. That silence wasn't surrender. It was planning. 3 mornings later, the mail arrived with its usual stack of envelopes, credit card offers, utility statements, one clipped recipe from my elderly neighbor across the hall. I thumbed through them absently until one envelope stopped me. No return address, just my name, printed in shaky letters. Inside, a folded sheet of wide-ruled notebook paper, worn at the edges, the top corner smudged. I opened it carefully. A crayon drawing, stick figures, 4 people, one holding a red heart. The figure had D. Kalin written beside it. At the top, in uneven, determined handwriting. D. Kalin, you always see me. My throat clenched. Taped to the back was a small, faded bracelet, knotted from the same string we'd used during a summer camp afternoon 3 years ago. Jovi had made it for me after I helped her through stage fright before a talent show. She wore the twin of it for weeks. I sat down on the floor of my hallway, mail forgotten beside me. That little loop of thread weighed heavier than anything I'd held all week. She remembered. Through everything, she remembered. That night, I poured myself a cup of mint tea and pulled open a folder on my desktop labeled Hold. Inside was a voice memo, one I'd saved years ago out of habit, back when I still made excuses for Seraphine. I hit play. Her voice crackled through the speakers. Just cover it this time, Kay. You know how Tobin is with money, and besides, you make more. You owe it to the family. I remembered the moment. 2020. She'd called late, said their account was overdrawn again, said Mom would panic if she found out, said I was the only one who understood how things worked. I hadn't planned on using it. Back then I thought saving it was a petty reflex. But now it was evidence. Not for a courtroom, at least not yet, but for truth, for sanity. Because they'd twisted the story long enough, made me feel like I was imagining things, that I was bitter, that I was jealous, that I was the unstable one. I opened my notes app and started building. Timeline, transfers, emails, voice memos, photos of receipts, screenshots of her GoFundMe, her donation claims, the family chat where my name never appeared. I didn't hit send. Not yet. Instead, I backed everything up. One copy went to Nyla, my lawyer friend. One stayed with me. One, on an encrypted cloud drive, shared with a contact I trusted outside the family, because I wasn't just dealing with a reckless sibling. I was dealing with someone who felt entitled to erase me, then wear my generosity like it was her birthright. And spiraling people? They fight hardest when their mask starts to slip. The next morning, I texted Seraphine. Everything is documented. Don't mistake my calm for compliance. The reply came an hour later. So you're threatening me now? Over money? I didn't respond. I simply attached a screenshot. The file name glowed on her screen. 2020 just this once.mp3. No caption, no explanation, just the weight of her own words staring back at her. Then I turned off my phone. I needed silence, but not hers. I walked to the window. The city lights flickered in the distance. Horns blared faintly. Somewhere downstairs, someone was walking their dog. Life kept moving. Inside me, though, everything was still, but not hollow, not empty, clear. Let her rage, let her play the victim, let her say whatever she needed to say to keep her story intact. I wasn't here to correct her anymore. I was here to tell my own, and if she wanted to twist that into a fight, fine. But this time, I was leading. No more gaslighting, no more guilted apologies, no more pretending peace was worth being invisible. My fingers tapped slowly on the countertop. They'd always written the story without me. Now I was building one they couldn't delete. She's not waiting for justice anymore. She's building it. The morning light hadn't even crept past the blinds when I sat down at the kitchen table, tea steeping beside me, laptop open. My fingers hovered over the mouse, one last time, one last hesitation. The email had been drafted the night before. To the McCarthys, always us subject, for clarity. I'd attached everything. Bank transfers, labeled and dated, screenshots from donation platforms with my routing number listed, the transcript of the voice memo, and the timeline carefully laid out in black and white. There were no accusations, just the truth. I sipped my tea once, then clicked send. For the first time in a long time, I leaned back, not to brace myself, but to release something I'd carried far too long. There were no butterflies in my chest, just stillness, like I'd finally put down a bag I didn't even know I was holding. By noon, the responses began trickling in. The first was from my father. 4 words. I didn't know it was that bad. Then a message from my cousin Maxine. Honestly, I always thought something was off. Thanks for speaking up. I didn't expect a flood of apologies, and I certainly didn't expect understanding, but even just a few acknowledgments felt like light cracking through a sealed room. Seraphine? She didn't reply directly, but half an hour later, her Facebook feed updated with a quote slapped on a filtered sunset. When people go low, you stay high. No names, no tags, just hollow martyrdom for whoever still wanted to believe she'd been wronged. I didn't answer, didn't react, because I didn't need to. I had finally done the one thing that no one in my family had ever done for me. I stood up for myself, with facts, not feelings. 3 days later, I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. A message from Jovi. Did you send that bracelet? I sat down slowly, the shirt in my hand slipping into my lap. I kept it for years, I typed. Just sent it back. The dots danced on screen. Then came her reply. I miss you. That was it, but it was everything. I set the phone aside and let the tears come, not out of grief this time, but out of something closer to release. That string bracelet, worn and sun-faded, had been our quiet language, and it had spoken louder than the lies she'd been told. Later that evening, I stood in my living room, holding the bracelet gently between my fingers. I placed it on my bookshelf, beside the old photo of Grandma Evelyn, the one where she stood tall beside her homemade pecan pie, hands flour-dusted, eyes proud. I slipped a small white card into the frame. On it, I wrote, I don't want power, I want peace. And peace doesn't come from silence, it comes from truth. As I adjusted the frame, my phone rang. Seraphine. For a second, I considered letting it ring, but then I picked up. Her voice was sharp. Are you happy now? I paused, looked out my window at the bare trees swaying gently in the late November wind. No, I said quietly, but I'm finally not ashamed. There was no reply, just the flat, emotionless tone of a call disconnected. I stood still for a moment, holding the phone in my palm like it was something fragile. Then I walked to the kitchen. I opened the cupboard, pulled out 2 place settings and set them down on the table. Not for Thanksgiving, not for a holiday. Just for truth, and for anyone who might choose to sit across from it one day. She sets the table for 2, not for Thanksgiving, just for truth, and whoever chooses to come sit beside it. 2 weeks before Christmas, I lit 3 candles, not because it was a holiday, but because I liked the way they softened the room. No garlands, no tree, no festive playlist humming in the background, just a warm roast in the oven, cornbread cooling on the counter, and 4 mismatched place settings laid out like I'd done it 100 times before. Melis arrived first, coat dusted with snow, cheeks pink from the cold. She brought a loaf of sourdough and a box of herbal tea with no label. "Family recipe," she winked. Then came the sound I didn't expect, a knock, light but rhythmic. I opened the door to see Jovi, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds dangling from her neck. "She said I could stay the weekend," she mumbled, "if that's okay." I didn't ask who she was. I just stepped aside and said, "Come in. We're about to eat." The dining table wasn't glamorous. No centerpiece, no linen napkins, but none of the chairs felt borrowed, and for the first time in years, I wasn't watching my words. I was part of the conversation. Over dinner, I listened more than I spoke. I watched Jovi's eyes soften as she spoke about school, and Melis laugh with her whole chest at some story about a college roommate and a turkey fryer gone wrong. In that hum of voices, I heard something missing, the word failure. Seraphine had tossed it at me like a title, one I was supposed to wear like a scarlet letter. But now, watching the people in front of me, I saw it differently. Failure isn't quitting a job that broke your spirit. Failure isn't saying no when someone's hand keeps taking without ever giving. Failure isn't letting go of people who only remember you when they need something. No, real failure is letting someone else write your story. And I was done doing that. I didn't go after Seraphine in court, didn't file a claim. But the consequences came anyway. The GoFundMe for Jovi's school trip vanished without a trace. A distant cousin called me, not to apologize, but to ask if I was okay, and then added, "Don't worry, no one's pretending anymore." Even Seraphine's Instagram changed. Gone were the curated dinners and filtered selfies. For weeks, the page stayed silent. Eventually, someone sent me a screenshot. She'd archived almost everything. I didn't follow her, didn't check. I didn't need to. That storm behind me? It wasn't mine to track anymore. One morning, between loading the dishwasher and steeping my second cup of tea, I checked the mailbox. Inside was an envelope. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. My father. The note was brief. "You did more than we ever acknowledged. I don't know how to undo that, but I hope you find peace where we gave you pain." I read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and placed it in the same drawer where I kept old utility bills and greeting cards. I didn't call him, didn't frame it, but I didn't throw it away either. Christmas came and went like a quiet breeze. Among the mail was one final card. No name, but the handwriting was unmistakably hers. Inside, a single word. "Whatever." I chuckled, not with bitterness, but with understanding. I dropped it into the fireplace, watched it curl and vanish, and for once I didn't feel compelled to respond, because silence now wasn't submission. It was certainty. Later that evening, I slipped the bracelet back onto my wrist, not to wear out, but to remember. I hadn't lost my family. I'd let go of the illusion of one, and this time when I set the table, I knew exactly who I was saving a seat for.